Hey guys, it's Lee, and today we're going to talk about how to do a full budget and money audit. Now, why would you want to do something like that? Well, sometimes we think that we have a full understanding of how we're actually spending our money and what our savings goals are and things like that. But the truth is that that's not always true. And sometimes we actually fail to account for, new changes in our lives. We might take on new expenses. Our income might change. Some of our goals might shift. And even after months and months of being on a budget, we might actually find out that we're still not hitting those financial goals that we've set out to actually achieve. So in order to stay on track, you might want to do what I call a full budget and money audit. Now, this is something that you're probably going to want to do every few months or so in order to stay true to your goals. Now, the first step is to start with a goal in mind. And you've heard start with the end in mind. That's exactly what I'm talking about. So you need to be thinking about what your financial goals are, right? Are you trying to buy a house in the next few years? Are you looking to get out of debt as quickly as you can? If so, when are you trying to buy that house, or when do you want to get out of debt? How fast do you want to do those things? So if you actually start with that goal in mind, then you can actually start your budget and money audit with a purpose, and it's not just something that you're doing willy-nilly and just because you found this video or just because someone told you that you should actually create a budget. So step 2 is to actually create a budget if you don't have one. So that's really the first thing you should be asking yourself. Do you have a budget? Do you kind of have a budget, or do you actually have a legit budget that has been written out and that you've been following? So either way, I'm going to tell you where you want to start. So first, you want to act as though you're creating a budget from scratch, okay? And that again includes you guys that say you've been following a budget, because you want to actually start from the beginning here. This is the point of this exercise, because you might have actually missed something, or you might find out that maybe you didn't do it the right way, or there's room for improvement. So that's why we're going to start over. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to write down all of your monthly expenses, and you don't want to leave anything out at all. This is something that's really important. People leave things out all the time when they're doing a budget, and it's very important that you don't do this. So you want to start off with some really popular categories that should come to you very quickly. So you might start off with your rental mortgage, your student loans, your car note, your gas, your electric, your water bill. Then of course there's your cell phone bill, your internet. If you have any children, maybe there's childcare cost, maybe there's subscription services like Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and all the others. Then of course you need to factor in, how much money you're spending on fuel per month for your car, if you have a car, and then of course how much you're setting aside for savings as well. So that might be where you start at first, and then you need to build from there. You need to look at your expenses and fill those in as well. If you have any bills that, come every several months or once a quarter or something like that, what you'll want to do is you want to figure out how much that might be per year, add that up, and then divide that by 12, and then sort of allocate that money into your budget every month. So that way, when it comes time to pay it, you have that money set aside to pay for it. Next, you want to look at how much money that you actually bring in. So you want to look at your income, and you want to look at that on a monthly basis. Now, again, you'll be able to see how much money you're going to have left over if you've filled out your expenses correctly. And again, it's really important not to leave anything out. So for instance, you'll want to budget for recurring expenses that that you'll probably need, right? So for instance, if you need to buy a top or a new pair of pants every so often for work, maybe that's something that you actually budget in. Or if you want to budget in a couple of, inexpensive outings or activities every month, then you'll want to do that as well. But you just need to make sure that you keep things realistic and you don't go overboard and be really mindful of your goals. And the reason why you want to consider things like that is because you don't want to have a budget that is so super duper strict that you feel like you're not having any fun, you don't have any room to breathe, you can't do anything. But you want to factor in those little small things along the way that keep you happy, but also keep you on track with your goals, because sticking with it long term is really something that it's going to be more important than just putting together a budget that you're not going to follow. So the key here is to really just focus on what's necessary and then consider what's realistic as well for your lifestyle. So step 3. So what you want to do after that is you want to pressure test your budget, and you want to do that by looking at your spending habits and some of those patterns around your spending as well. So for instance, instance, if you've already had a budget and you've been following it, then you'll want to do a dive into your bank account. And this is honestly something that you should do even if you haven't been following a budget. You want to definitely dive into your bank account just to see, number one, if you've had that budget, how well you've been sticking to it. And then number two, if you haven't had a budget, this will help you determine if there are any patterns or any habits that you have when it comes down to spending. So again, you'll want to review transactions and look out for any outliers as well as any, frequent expenses at the same or, similar establishments, right? So if you've been overspending on your budget, for instance, and you can't figure out why, then you need to look closer at your account. And some common places that people mess up are sometimes, with really small purchases. And, if things are really tight over the course of the month, and you've been going to Starbucks maybe 6 or 7 times, and maybe you've gone to some fast food places a few times as well, that really adds up very quickly, if you can imagine. Or if you see lots of frequent grocery store purchases, for instance, right? Maybe that might be a sign that you can plan your meals better so that you're not really making those unplanned trips to the store and going over on your budget. So again, you want to be reasonable and go back and check your numbers just to make sure that they're realistic and something that you can stick to. Again, you don't want to create a budget that is so restrictive that it's such a pain that you're again not going to follow it. I just want you to remember that it's not going to work. Again, this is not something that you can actually do month in and month out. Now, step 4, you want to take a look at your money, right? Look at your finances overall. Here, you're going to want to take a look at the money you actually possess, right? So you need to look at, how much do you have? Do you have an emergency fund, which again is super important. And I'll leave a link in the description below showing you how to build an emergency fund as well and why it's so important. So go ahead and check that out after this video. But if not, what you want to do is you need to think about how much would you need if you don't have one. Again, that's going to be in that video, but that's something to consider, right? And, you also need to think about, do you just have lots of cash just sitting there laying around? Can you put some of that money to work? Can you put some of that money towards a debt? Can you put some of that money towards some other goals that you might have? Should you be investing that money? Right? So you want to create a plan for each dollar to your name, essentially. Now, step 5, you want to establish realistic timelines for your goals, right? So now that you have a nice full picture of your finances, you can actually apply a realistic timeline for your goals. So if you'd like to, have a down payment on a new home in 3 years, and you can save X amount of money per month, which is Y amount per year, then all of a sudden that hard work and sacrificing that you're doing, sticking to your budget instead of splurging and living that life without a care in the world, it all begins to make sense and feel a little bit easier, right? And, maybe it's debt. Maybe you need to repay some debt and, you want to pay all those debts off within 3 years, but maybe based on the budget that you've created, it's going to take you 5 years. And, that's perfectly okay too. But because you're going to be, revising your budget along the way and doing those mini audits along the way, your timelines could change a little bit. Maybe, you might have an increase in your income at some point, or maybe you'll pick up some side hustles or find some other ways to make money, and maybe that will shorten that time frame if that's what you want to do. So I hope this video helped you create that full budget and money audit. Be sure to check out my video on how to stick to a budget. Well, I'll leave that up here and also in the description below, so you can check that out after this video, because there's nothing like creating a budget and not sticking to it. So make sure you watch that video so that you can figure out how to best stay on track with your budget. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.